Wow. Well, we're going to be talking about our innate meaning natural, our natural superpowers, the superpowers within that we all have. And the reason we wanted to talk about this, I just wanted to give you a bit of an idea how powerful this is. So Jules can tell her story in a minute, but there's this deeper order, there's this power, there's this potential behind life. And if you ever watch the movie Star Wars, when they talk about the Force, it really isn't a metaphor. There's something very, very present and real there. So I wanted to talk about my use of the Force.
Beautiful.
By using the Force, which we're defining as this innate superpower, I've had the most miraculous, beautiful life. I've traveled all over the world. I've been up to the base of Everest. I've seen the Ganges. I've hung out with holy men in Nepal. I've been to the Sahara Desert and been on treks. I've filmed in prisons. I've been everywhere, all over Europe, and it's all down to this force, down to this superpower. It has nothing to do with me, Rudy Kennard, personally. It's being in alignment with something before Rudy Kennard that works through Rudy Kennard, if that makes sense. Mm. I've also had the opportunity following this power to create a website now that's reached an estimated 1 million people. So it's very, very practical. And I think the best use of this power has me been finding Jules here. It was a bit difficult initially, but when I really opened my heart and allowed that force to move me, it moved me in such a beautiful direction. And now we're living in Hawaii. Mm. There's giant sea turtles sort of 15-minute drive away, and it's all due to this force. So we're going to be talking about this force. Anything you want to add to your use of the force?
Well, yeah. So I've experienced some losses in my life, and most recently, I lost my son to a custody battle and my daughter to a fatal traffic accident. And this was just after her 18th birthday when she graduated high school. With that said, there was something inside of me that percolated up. That assisted in navigating this with compassion and love. Mm. And that's something that I'm going to say this in a way I wish I had when I was a teenager. But the thing is that I always had it. It's always there. And I like to compare it to when you're watching a beautiful movie that just brings compassion and love from your heart. It's that feeling. And that feeling doesn't come from the movie. It comes from you. It is originating from you, percolating up from you. It never leaves you. It's always there. It's a beautiful innate intelligence that we are all connected to, each and every one of you. So, and that force also helped me find Rudy. So, yes, and it's just, that's something that I just wanted to say, that it's always there.
And I filmed Jules's story, a story of love and resilience. And what really struck me when I met Jules is her following this force was so natural for her. It allowed her to navigate very, very difficult circumstances with this unbelievable resilience, this unbelievable love, this unbelievable flow. And I think we got, I don't know, 7,000 views within about 10,000 views within about 3 days or something, because it was so powerful. So you may be wondering, well, what is this force? What is this innate power? What is this resilience within? Well, the first thing to say about that is that everybody's got it, but I didn't know that I had it when I was young. I didn't know that I had it when I was a teenager. And because I had it, but I didn't know that I did, it's a bit like walking along with a backpack on. You know, you can't really see a backpack because you can't see behind you, but you've got it on. Well, we've got this backpack full of this incredible potential and wonder right with us all the time. But when you try and look, you kind of like turn your body so you can't see it, but it's there. And what we're going to do is we're going to point out that it's there, not that you can get it, or you have to do this to get it. We're going to say it's already there. I'm even wearing my Flash t-shirt on purpose to I'm not going to Flash. I have to pay extra for that. But this is my Flash t-shirt because he's a superhero. Anyway, I digress. So this potential, this power, this force we have within, it's within everybody. And when I didn't know that I had it, I would follow my head. I'll follow my intellect. I'll follow what I should do. I'll follow what other people will tell me to do. And when I started realizing this force within, it took me from following what I should, must do, think the best thing is to do, to following the force within here. A metaphor is the heart. Another metaphor would be love, a loving feeling. It's so, the force is like a quiet whisper, and the head is like a brass band. So the brass band is really loud, and it makes sense to listen to that because it's so loud. But the quiet whisper, it's hard to hear, but it's basically telling you everything you need to know. It's guiding you in the way that you couldn't possibly do yourself with your head. It's sharing information with you that will not only help your life, but help other people's lives. And as we reorientate from here, again, metaphors from here to here, you find that it leads you via inspiration, meaning in spirit. It leads you inspirationally to doing and becoming and achieving just absolute miracles. And we can all do it. And the only thing stopping us is the thought that we can't.
Right. It's like the flakes in a snow globe. The snow globe is so beautifully, when it's set on a table and the snow is just laying down at the bottom, those flakes represent our thoughts. And when we get in there and kind of mess with it, and the thoughts, the snow becomes a little chaotic, it's really difficult to see. It's difficult to navigate through that blurriness. But if we just sort of set our snow globe aside, let our thoughts just relax, then our clarity becomes very evident. And we begin to see not with our eyes, but with our heart. It percolates up, and it's always there. Even when I know what it's like to feel lost and alone and like no one has your back. But ultimately, you're never lost and alone because you have this superpower inside of you. It's innate. You were born with it, and it never leaves. It's what connects us all, each and every one of us.
I remember as a young man when I was sort of, basically obviously when I was younger, this white in my beard, I just painted that on so I looked a bit more wise. But
Yes.
I'm obviously not, just pretending. So when I was younger, I was very angry. As a very, very angry young man, I channeled my aggression out through sport and exercise because I didn't want to be my dad. I didn't want to harm people. I just took my aggression out on sport and on inanimate objects. So I was always punching walls and things. I'm surprised my knuckles are actually still there. And I didn't know about this superpower. And so I was living in the feeling of my head, and it was telling me I'm useless. I'm not going to amount to anything. People don't like me. I'm unintelligent. I'm a waste of space, etc., etc., etc. And so I was living as if that was true, because thinking makes things look true, even though they're not. And I'm sure you've watched illusionists do things like, there's this UK magician called Dynamo who like walked through a wall, and there's Copperfield who flew within like a glass structure. Like, Dynamite isn't walking through walls and Copperfield isn't actually flying, but boy, does it look like it. That's the illusion of our perception. Our perception makes things look real even though they're not. And if anyone watching this is getting thoughts that you're not good enough, that you can't do anything, that you're unintelligent, etc., 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 that's the illusion of life. It's not an instruction as to who you are. It's just a construction of your mind. Mm-hmm. And as you know, constructions and illusions are not real. They just look real. So I was living in this illusion, in this construction, believing my thinking about myself. And then there's an experience happened, which I won't talk about because it's a bit strange, but I had this experience and I realized that, oh, I'm living in a thought storm of myself, and who I really am is boundless and edgeless and whole and complete. And I have everything I need within. And anything that I want to do in life, I can create. Mm-hmm. Example, I wanted to create a movie, a bit like Anne's doing with this at the moment. Resources for the world, free resources. Anyone in the world could hear this kind of bit like what we're talking about at the moment. And I thought, okay, I'm going to go around the world, I'm going to film. And it's like, well, got no money, I haven't got even a camera, I don't know how to edit, and I don't really know anyone who I can film. But the quiet whispering of the force was in me. It's like, Rudy, you really need to film. So I ignored it and I ignored it. And the more I ignored it, the louder it got. It's like a stone in your shoe. It's like a splinter in your soul. It's like a nagging voice, like a nagging parent going, oh, clean your bedroom up. It's like, do this thing that you feel inspired to do. But what happens is when we ignore it, when we put it aside, when we cut it down with, I haven't got enough money, I haven't got enough talent, I don't know what I'm doing. In a sense, you're kind of allowing your head to be your boss. When the boss is the heart, you follow the boss, and that boss is the right one. This boss gives you everything you need and encourages you. This boss doesn't give you anything you need and disempowers you. So as you swap alignments, I just started learning videography. I started learning editing. I met someone called Gabriela Maldonado, and she said, oh, if you're ever in America, come and visit. I was like, okay, I'm going to come and visit. I only met her on a course, and all of a sudden I've turned up at her house. It's like, who the hell are you? Anyway, it's another story. And so in the process of doing that, myself, my ex-partner co-created this enormous site that's now got well over an estimated 1 million people. But the point of the story is that I didn't have theoretically everything in the form that I needed. Form meaning skills, money, objects. But you don't need that. You've got everything you need in here. And following in here then magically creates the stuff out there that you need. It's like, I call it following the breadcrumbs of the universe. You can only see one breadcrumb at a time. So you go to that one, and then you look around, there's one over there, and you go to that one, and it guides you towards the destination. And the beauty isn't the destination. The beauty is actually the journey. Can you tell us about your following the breadcrumbs?
Exactly. Well, I didn't have that extravagant of a life. I was a single mom and raising 3 beautiful, beautiful children. My youngest, as I said, I lost in a custody battle. And after that, I just fell into a depression. When I lost him, we were currently living in a tent because we were so poor. And then after the state came to the tent site and took him, that's when I fell into a little depression, about 2 weeks. I was depressed long before that, but a deep depression. And then one day, like Rudy said, I began to, it happened with this little dog. This little dog came up to me every time I would cry, and I stopped my thinking. and I would console a dog. And what I realized is that my son wasn't being taken over and over again. It was, I was living in the feeling of my thoughts about that over and over again. And that kept my heart covered and my head very chaotic with thoughts. And then once I began to realize that I am okay, I remember looking at myself and going, I'm okay. I am okay in this very moment. I was always okay. It was just my thinking that I wasn't okay. And so I was still homeless, but I was applying for this amazing position and I got it. And the thing that I'm going to share right now is significant. It's a little sad, but it's very significant, because in knowing that we're always connected to that deep wisdom, that innate intelligence, that resonance that's always there. Just after I got the phone call that I received my position, I got another phone call that my 18-year-old daughter had passed away in a fatal car accident. But knowing this, I was able to navigate through this connection, through this horrible traumatic, with a connection of love and compassion. And a knowing that we're never alone. That's all I can say about that right now.
Yeah, so if you watch Jules's story of resilience on innateevolution.com, I'm not sure if I'm allowed to say that or not, but so she tells her story in more depth about flowing through, allowing this inner space to guide you through this turbulent outer world. And if you place, as a young man, I really wanted to have all these things in the outer world to feel secure. And it's like building a house on quicksand, because the outside world is impermanent. Things change, people lose you. You could lose your job, you can lose a person that you're with. So attaching your worth to out there is kind of like, you know, sleeping on quicksand and wondering why you're sinking. It's just not logical. So when we turn our eyes from trying to feel good by having stuff out there to within, you can feel good for no reason, non-dependent on who you're with or not with, what you're doing or not doing, what you have or what you don't have. And that evades a lot of depression. It evades a lot of potential problems. It evades a lot of future suffering, because you're connected with a force and the force is flowing through you. And another word that I use for the force is a sense of love. When I'm faced with two decisions and I just don't know what to do, I get quiet and I ask the question, what is the most loving choice right now? And my body tells me, I get a feeling. It's like a feeling. And following that feeling is really courageous, because it could tell you to do the opposite of what society or other people are telling you to do. Being a Jedi, in a sense, is very courageous. Using the Force is enormously courageous, because you're not traveling the well-trodden path, you're creating your own path. If you want to be a paradigm breaker, if you want to create your own path, if you want to do what other people haven't done, this is the alignment that you need. And there's nothing wrong with trotting the path most trodden by other people too. You don't have to do anything, but following your own wisdom, your own force, your own heart, your own love, it knows what you're doing. It has your back. It gives you guidance. It's got everything you need within you. And I just wish I'd known this when I was younger. Luckily, I started to understand this when I got to 20, and my life changed from being angry, hurt, depressed. I got in black moods where nobody could take me out of it apart from my sister. And now I'm depressed, I'm in black moods, and I'm only joking. And now there's this lightness. And whenever I get confused, and believe me, I do, I just know to sit and listen within, and it shows me what to do. And I know anything I want to do, I can achieve, because it's not me really achieving it. It's listening to that and allowing that to move through me, to guide me. And it's probably the most incredible connection, most incredible force, most incredible gift that we all have as human beings, is to use and listen, use that force.
That's beautiful. And then you begin to resonate. You begin to resonate, and it's not an act of doing, it's just an act of being. It's a connection. And you see things differently. Life looks differently. You see things with clear eyes. It's like putting on a pair of glasses, and it's beautiful. It's absolutely beautiful. After Sophia's transition, I like to say she transitioned from physical to non-physical, because the love was always there. It's always there. It's still here. After her transition, many people that were feeling lost and alone and hurt began to call. And I would speak to them, and it didn't matter. It would be 2 a.m. in the morning, and I would speak to them. And I used to call it word vomit. These words just came out. And really what that is your wisdom. It's your wisdom. It's the connection. It's that feeling that's deep inside your heart, untouched by thought. The flowing of the essence of life. And when we get caught up in our thoughts of life shouldn't be like this, life shouldn't be like that, we start to believe it. And the thing about this is, when we start to believe these thoughts that are untrue, we feel uncomfortable. And that tells us that we're being pinched off from that essence, that trueness, that true self within. I like to call that your internal guidance system. So that's how I know if I'm believing a thought that isn't true, or I've hopped onto a train of thought and traveled very far, because it's amazing how far you can get before you realize, oh, I'm doing it again. And then you just hop off and you just fall back into that space of silence.
So that space of silence is within everybody. You don't have to, I mean, you can, but you don't have to meditate or do anything to make that more obvious, because it's built into us. Like our hearts beating without any volition, without any will of our own, like our eyes are blinking. We're not thinking, okay, I'm going to blink now. I'm going to blink now. Stop talking to me. I'm concentrating on blinking. You just blink. Your heart just beats. That's innate. It's built into us. This power is built into us. We don't have to do anything for it to work. But what we can do is realize it's there, and then it seemingly works better in that there's less stuff in the way of it working, meaning thoughts, I can'ts and I shoulds. So when there's a removal of the brass band in the head, there's an increase in the silence, and the silence is the guide. And even if your head is playing a brass band, the silence is still present, and you can still make decisions, good decisions, when there's a brass band playing too. So it's free and it's complete. And I can't tell you, if anyone's watching who's under 20, or, oh my goodness, what a world awaits you. What an incredible journey awaits you. Like the things you could do and become and achieve, and the people you can meet. I remember once I was in India and I was staying in a backpackers, and I looked outside the window, and there's this guy there on the street, Indian guy, no arms at all. And he was radiant, and he was beaming, and he was smiling. And I was like, okay. I was there for 2 weeks, and every morning, lunchtime and evening, basically whenever I was back at the backpackers, I looked out the window, I looked at him, and every time he was beaming, radiant and smiling. I was like, oh, maybe he's having a good day. Maybe he's having a good week. Maybe he's having a good 2 weeks. And when I left, I walked past him, and he looked at me, and I looked at him, and my heart opened. Now, he has no money. He's homeless. He has no arms, but he's got the force. And he was so, so, so much happier than all the backpackers and tourists who walked past him who had everything.
And you felt the force within you just watching him.
Yeah, it drew the force out of me.
That's that feeling of compassion. And you don't get that exteriorly. It originates inside. If you watch a movie, you watch even a beautiful commercial or a beautiful animal in nature, the feeling is not coming from them. It's originating from you. That's your beautiful force inside, your innate force that's always there.
So I was wondering, that is so lovely. And I think the feeling, I think people may not, even if they don't get what you're talking about, right? The feeling is there. You can, and it's, I noticed when I was listening that, yeah, that sounds so familiar. It feels so familiar. I can feel the feeling of, even if I didn't understand the words, I can feel that that's true. And
right.
and people can just, play with that, experiment with it, can't they? And just see what they notice in their own lives about that. So one thing that came to me though was, what about if people, you mentioned, Rudy, that we can ignore that, the force, when it's speaking to us quietly, and we can ignore it and we can say, oh no, I'm going to do something else. I'm going to listen to this. And what if, can it be too late? I mean, what if they listen to this and then they think it's too late to, oh, I missed it, right? What about that?
I think that happens to all of us. Oh, I should have done this. I should have done that. Why didn't I do this? But then it's our thoughts questioning that. But in hindsight, hindsight is 2020. In hindsight, that feeling, it's just a way of getting to know what's the force that's percolating up inside. It's just a simple introduction, if you will. And before you know it, you're good friends with this force. But it's that feeling. And sorry, I interrupted.
No, I love hearing you talk. Well, the thought it's too late is another thought.
Oh, beautiful.
It's not even true. It's just another one of that. It's too late. I'm too old. I'm not good enough. We're going to come up with something. It's all thought. So it's never too late. I remember going to a Calypso class when I was traveling in South America, and a lady joined, and she was 82. And oh my goodness, seeing the joy on that beautiful old lady's face. She couldn't move that well, but she was moving as much as she could. It was just beautiful, just seeing the joy. Like, you're not too old and you're not too young to experience joy. Joy is just built into the system again. It's what happens when we forget about what our head's telling us and we just revel in life, in a sense. And again, another word for this force or this innate power is, you can also call it your gut instinct.
Yeah.
You can call it your intuition. There's lots of words we can use for that. And I know, and I'm hoping people can relate to this, that when I get a feeling, an intuition about something, I ignore it. It doesn't go so well for me. So it becomes kind of obvious. And so it's never too late. You're never too old. You're never too young. You never lose it, because you can't, because it's you. But there's this wellspring of information. It's like the internet. Like, we were driving and I was looking up different foods and this and that. And I was going, oh, kombucha, what's the glycemic index of this? And I was just asking. So I was asking Siri, anything in my mind, I asked Siri, and Siri kind of tells me. Normally she goes, I found a web page. And I was like, no, just tell me. So I kept looking at web pages, and this ready information. Now, I mean, this is how old I am. When I was at school, even at university, the internet hadn't even been invented. So you couldn't do that, but now you can. You've got instant access to information. Now, we have instant access to this spiritual internet, to this internet force, if you will, that has all the information we need. It doesn't come in factual oh yes, in 2022, this is going to happen. It's not like factual like that. It comes with a feeling. It's a feeling within. It's a guidance. It's a
gut
movement.
feeling.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's hard to describe in the way that I like to describe it is if you see something that sort of ignites that within. That's that feeling, and it's never too late. Never ever too late. I was living in my car and I began to connect with that feeling, and that's when I received the phone call of my daughter's fatal accident. And just with that feeling, with that connection, with that deep knowing, with our superpower, navigated through. So it's never too late. It doesn't matter where you are. There's always that space of silence within. It's always there.
And one of the things that I remembered as well was like you said, really that even when it's noisy, you can still, it's still there, that you can still, because when my mum, I was looking after my mum, helping her with alternative cures when she had cancer. And we had found a cure that worked. And even though the doctors had said there's nothing that can work and it's all downhill from here, actually over the next 6 months, all of her tumors went away.
Wow.
And yeah, wow. But then at 6 months, she told me that they'd started coming back again. And you can imagine how, this is before I knew about this understanding, right? So I knew that I'd always asked for guidance. I knew that there was something guiding me. But I guess at that stage, I thought it was outside of me. I didn't realize it was inside, it was who I am and so on. So at that stage, I thought it was outside of me. And at that stage, I had done all this personal development stuff. I had read all the books and done all the, every course there was going. So I was like, I have to think positive. I have to think positive. And if I don't, it's going to affect everybody else, right? So on top of when my mother told me that the tumors were coming back, that there was a thought storm about, I have to find something else for her, and I can't let my mother die, and I can't let my father go through that. And yet, behind all of that, so that was all going on. And then there was, on top of that, there was, you mustn't think negative, you mustn't feel negative because that'll make her worse, and blah, 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 all of this on top. And still, behind all of that, I heard, right, you need to get out of here. You need to go into your little van, into my little camper van, right? And drive up to the North Coast, because I was back here in Jersey at the time. Drive up to the North Coast, sit on the North Coast somewhere nice and quiet, and look at the lovely view and ask for guidance, right? But despite all of that stuff going on, that was the message coming through. And when I did that, almost immediately, I got help. And it was about 2.5 years later, because it was about 6 months after that I first heard about the principles, when just about a week or two before my mum died. And it was about 2 years after that before I realized that experience I'd had on the North Coast was actually telling me the principles. It was really funny. Anyway, so and telling me about this understanding that it just told me to be basically, it gave me some phrases to repeat for a few minutes, but basically what they were telling me was, you don't have to get rid of any of this, you don't have to get rid of your thoughts or your feelings, you just trust in what's happening, and you're not in charge. And that was the same understanding, right? Like, the force is flowing through you, it's not your responsibility, it will take care of everything. And so it's there all the time. And the biggest thing that, when I read, the first time I've heard about this understanding was when I read Somebody Should Have Told Us. And what I understood then was, I had known that there was guidance, but I had thought that my uncomfortable feelings were also guidance, were part of that guidance. I hadn't realized it was just like you said, that lovely feeling and that knowing feeling. It was like when I got a feeling that was like, oh, you shouldn't do this. Or I didn't realize that was coming from thought, right? That was the big difference for me. I didn't realize all that you should do this and you shouldn't do that, and all that sort of feeling. Like you said, Jules, that when you're feeling like that, it's telling you actually you're looking the wrong way. You're listening to thought. You're not listening to guidance. So that was So you've told that brilliantly.
Excellent point. It's almost like there's a contraction when you're listening to your thoughts, and an expansion when you let your wisdom flow, when you have that alignment and that connection. Excellent point. Yes.
Yeah, I love that, Anne. It's an uncomfortable feeling, whether it's anxiety or stress, isn't telling you what to do. It's just really telling you what you're thinking, because you're going to feel what you think. And in fact, a lot of the times, if you're not doing something that makes you feel anxious or excited, if it's something that your heart is asking you to do, you will get those kind of feelings, because it's courageousness. It's going beyond what you've done before. It's doing things you've never done before. And that's going to create anxiety in our minds. Again, the anxiety isn't telling us not to do it. It's just telling us what we're thinking. An example of that is, I loved your story, and it reminded me when my mum was passing away. I was trying to fix her. And then my wisdom spoke, or the force guided me, and it just said, up until this point, I was almost falling out with my mum because she wouldn't take the vitamins I asked her to do, and she wouldn't eat what I was asking her to eat. And she was sitting there, no hair, smoking cigarettes, swigging back coffee, and having a McDonald's burger. And I was thinking, but that's all the reverse you want to do to help, So anyway, it caused a disconnection, and my mum didn't have long to live. I didn't want to be disconnected from her. And so the brass band was playing, and I was so upset. And so I'd forgotten about this force, because this was about 10 years ago or something. And then I remembered, I've got a backpack on. Let's see what's in the backpack. And it said, go to the woods and be quiet. And I was like, well, how's that going to help my mum? That's really helpful. So I did. I followed it, went to the woods, got quiet, and then a thought appeared, and it just said, quit trying to save your mum and just love her. And so I did. I gave up trying to save her, and I just loved her. And all of a sudden, connection back. And I had the most beautifully connected 3 weeks with her before she passed away, that I wouldn't have had if I was inflicting my will on her. So this force, it can seem like it's not helping us, and it's shades of grey. It's not all flower fields and sunshine. It can seem the reverse, but it's always, if it leads in the direction of love, no matter what the external circumstances will be created by following that gut instinct, it's always leading us home again.
That's beautiful. I'd like to talk to all the people out there that have never heard of the principles, because I'm one of you. Mm-hmm. So I had this experience prior to learning about the principles. Yes. And I like to say I fell out of the tree in the back garden of the understanding that Rudy so eloquently teaches, because I kind of came into the house, pulled back the curtains, and I thought, wow, because I thought there was something wrong with me, because I was able to flow through and navigate through my daughter's transition with love and compassion and a beautiful, brilliant clarity when I would look out to the world. And I wasn't aware. I thought, I'm in denial. No, but it feels right.
And you were being told that.
Yeah, I was being told that by my community, but I'm in denial, but no, it felt right. I felt a connection. I felt a love, a compassion. So I just followed that feeling. And I'd like to say that I feel like I'm proof that what the principles are pointing to is real. It's very real. It's there. It's with you. It never leaves. It's innate. It's what connects each and every one of us.
Yeah, and it's not a technique that you need to learn to do.
No.
It's that you were already doing it, and that we're all already doing it. It's just like you said, that's just when we take notice of thought, we miss it.
Right.
Yeah. So something else that came to my mind when you were talking originally was all this stuff about manifesting. All this stuff about manifesting doesn't make any sense, really, when you know all the, because before I understood this understanding, I used to do all that manifesting things, like you have to think in a certain way to get things to come to you. And you've just shown that actually you didn't do any of that, and your life just turned out beautifully, and you got, you had lots of really lovely experiences and so on. And as soon as I understood about this understanding, it made sense to me why and how it appeared that sometimes things would manifest in that way, but actually it was happening anyway. And the force was there all the time. And that if we just allow it to happen, that's how life is. Yeah, rather than having to sit down and do this and write so many things out and all of that stuff. Yeah.
It's a state of consciousness, it's a beingness, it's a resonance. There's something called sympathetic resonance, where if you bang a tuning fork and it starts vibrating, a tuning fork next to it that hasn't been touched at all starts vibrating. And if you've got, I play, well, badly, but I do play guitar. And if you pick a string, a guitar on the other side of the room, that same string would start resonating. And so there's this resonance, and with this resonance of truth, with the force, with this resonance of this, whatever word you want to put on it, you start resonating into a different reality, into a different creation, if you will. But it's so natural that it doesn't involve doing anything. It's just a state of being, and it's a natural state of being.
Yeah, and it's not about having to think positive. And that's what it was all, a lot of that was about. You have to think positive so that you put out positive feelings so that all this positive stuff comes back to you. Where actually what you've been saying is that force is that loving force, that lovely feeling is our natural state of being. So as soon as we stop taking notice of all the thought, we're in that feeling anyway. We don't have to make ourselves feel positive.
It's a positive force fundamentally, because it's love. Love is, I don't really like the word positive because it can seem, but it's a very, very positive meaning, a nice feeling. It's a resonance. It's a positive force that's within already. And via not disbelieving the mental mind chatter, there's more of an awakened force. There's more of that awakened positive force, that resonance within, and that will obviously lead us towards things. So again, it's within. We don't need to do anything. It's already present, and it's ready and waiting to help us, to guide us, to give us information, to take us on incredible journeys in the world and in life and with people. It's packed, its suitcases there, it's ready to take us and ensure us the most incredible life if we'll let it.
Right. One other thing that just came to my mind was, what about people who are frightened of dying? Because we've talked about death, and it seems to me that we've all had experience of death, and that none of us is actually afraid of dying because we've had that, and we know that we are more than just physical bodies and so on. But what about people who are frightened of that feeling, or have fear of death and are frightened of that feeling around death?
Well, again, the fear of death is another thought that's creating an unpleasant feeling with us. And it's completely normal. We need to be frightened of death, otherwise we're not going to jump out of the way if we're going to get knocked by a car. It's completely normal and biological. But life's a full contact sport, and nobody gets out alive.
Right.
It's like an arena, and the arena of life. Every single gladiator that gets in dies. So when you reframe, when you've got this physical death, and looking at it as physical death, it can be quite terrifying. But as our state of being arises and we look down at death, we have a very different perception on death. And that state of consciousness, the force within us that's always within us and never leaves us because it is us, that's still there when we physically die, and that is us. So really there isn't death. Your metaphor of the tree, honey.
Oh. Well, if you were to focus on leaves and the autumn leaves that fall from a tree, you would think that tree, that leaf is dead, but really it's creating new life. It's birthing new life. It falls to the ground. It nourishes a whole ecosystem of little microscopic organisms that feed the ground and go back up into the tree again, and flourish. It flourishes once again. It's just like the volcano that erupted here last year. It looked very traumatic and it looked devastating, but really what it was doing is creating new earth. And there's these beautiful ohia trees that are now growing on earth that was never there. It's a continual evolution. We're just borrowing these earth rovers. I like to call them earth rovers, like the Mars rover. These are earth rovers. But like Rudy said, while we're here, it's our thinking about death. It's our resistance. It's our what ifs, and it's our future thinking that takes away from the now, because we're here right now and we're all okay.
We came from this great oneness, or this great silence, or this universal force, and we go back to it. There, life and death, creation and destruction is really a human concept. And yes, of course, people physically die, but from a different perspective. Like this shirt, at the end of the day, I'm going to take it off and I'm going to put a different shirt on tomorrow. Is this dead? Well, it served its purpose. So these clothes of the physical body are just that. They serve their purpose in this time space, and then we shed it, and then there's something that goes on. So the fear of death is really believing that death and life exists, and a higher perspective, or a different ballpark is seeing it's all just this one creative power going in and out of form, and nothing really lives or dies. I mean, even science says energy can be created nor destroyed, just transformed. So there's a transformation that happens, and so that's what we're frightened of.
So what about this force how can we use this force then for saving the planet, for example?
Well, the force is the planet, and the force is saving itself, in a sense that now this may be contrary to what people believe, but, and maybe I don't know how this will show up, but there's various TED Talks. They've looked historically at what's happening with the world, and for the first time in history, there are more trees. Tree coverage is going up globally for the first time. Access to clean water is going up. Dictatorships are going down. Democracies are going up. More people have access to food than they've ever had before. Wars are going down. Now, that's not just wishful thinking. That's actually bona fide research. And if you Google Steven Pinker on TED Talks, he kind of talks about it much more eloquently than me. So the world's getting a lot better. Yes, terrible things are happening, but in a sense, humans aren't doing it to the world, because it's hard to put into words really, but there's just nature. The earth is nature, it's natural. Now we're humans and we're also part of nature. We're not just part of nature, we are nature humaning. So in a sense, this nature is doing what it's doing to the world through humanity. And at the moment, it's uncreating it through humanity. So you can't separate us from the planet, and you can't separate the planet and us from the force. It's all one energy appearing as a planet and appearing as being human. So it's all just a cycle that's just happening. And I would heartily recommend, if you're interested, to Google this Optimist Daily. I get, my God, the amazing things that are going on. In fact, the only thing in the study that's getting worse, okay, the only thing that's getting worse in the last 30 years is the media representation of what's happening on the planet is getting more and more negative. As things get better, the media coverage is more and more negative. So you need to look beyond the mainstream media and go to what's, yes, there is stuff going on, bad things going on, absolutely. But we see this much bad stuff is reported. And the good stuff's over there, but it's not even reported, or very, very rarely. So again, it's a different perspective. So the question, what can we do about what's happening in the world, is, well, we are the world and the world is us, and we are the force, and it's taking care of itself. Like our immune system takes care of a cold without us doing anything, Earth is taking care of itself via nature, and we are nature.
Beautiful.
Yeah, and it's what occurs to me is that we are following the force. The force is telling each of us, is flowing each of us, and we each do our own little bit of whatever is. So we're already doing that. We're already following. If we are following the force, and one, either we are or we're not. And then when we do wake up or notice, and like, oh yeah, so we'll do it. But we, like me doing this series, like I didn't know I was going to do this series. And then one day I woke up and I was doing it. I was like, how did that happen?
Perfect. Yeah.
And at the same time, I know, I know that, like you, when you were doing your filming and so on, it's like, I had no idea how I was going to do it or what I was going to do. And it just came one step at a time. And I have spent every hour of every day doing it. And it doesn't feel like work at all. When it doesn't feel like work, you're on the right path, right? So everybody has the force, and the force is taking each of us, because we're all part of it. Like you said, we're all part of it. You just follow the force.
Yeah.
That's beautiful.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I love what you're doing, Anne, it's so beautiful. You just had the idea, acting on it and creating it. And that's the thing, the force is so creative. My goodness. Jules coined the term, we are creation with the power to create. So not only are we nature, or this force, or this larger resource, potential, God even behind life, but we're a microcosm of that, like we're a part of that with the same powers, like to create.
And that's exactly what you're doing, Anne.
Yes, exactly what you're doing. It's exactly who we are. And look at the impact that these videos are going to have, or having on people, because people can watch this for years and years and years and years from the act of creation. And all that happened is you had an idea, Anne, and you didn't let your thinking get in the way of it. And I'm sure you had thinking saying you couldn't, and I can't, and who am I, and how would I do it, and blah, 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 blah. But you just went with the force, and it flows you. And the thing about the force, it's like a tide. You get in the water, and a strong enough tide just naturally takes you back to the ocean. You don't even have to do anything. It just sweeps you back to the ocean. But we think we can do a better job, so we start swimming in the opposite direction. So when you allow this force to take us, it's like a tide that goes back to the silence of the ocean. and that ocean is home, that ocean is love, and we have that within. And I can't say enough, we have it, we are it, it's within every single person. Nobody doesn't have this.
Right.
All that can happen is we can have a perception that we don't, because of the weight of our own thinking.
Right.
And like, we just watched the movie Rocket Man with Elton John, and that's a real movie of resilience, what he went through, and he found home again through this incredible drug addiction and troubles and trauma and legal battles, but he found love again, he found home again. It really doesn't matter what you've been through, what you're going through, it's still there. It just gets screened over with a whole bunch of cloudy thinking. But if you look at nature, eventually it does clear, and the sun's always there, you know.
That's beautiful.
Yeah, that's really lovely. Thank you.
Mm.
So we don't have any questions, and I don't have any more questions or anything to add, I don't think. So do you have anything else that you would like to say? Or
That the superpower is innate. It's always there. And any discourse, any uncomfortable feeling that we have is pulling us away from that superpower. It's getting pinched off, generally by our thoughts. And that's our friend. That uncomfortable feeling is our friend. It's an indicator that we are getting pulled away.
Beautiful.
oh, that's so lovely. And I'm sure lots of people are going to get lots out of listening to this, and not just listening to it, but feeling it, because the feeling is just so lovely. So thank you, really. Thank you both very much.
Thank you, Anne.
Thank you.
Yeah, so we'll leave it at this, and hopefully people will sit in the feeling for even longer, because it's beautiful.
Thanks, Anne.
All right.
Bless
See you again soon.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.